Welcome to the Runetech Archives. Book 1, Bronze and Blood. Chapter 10, Ritual and Remains. The drive took us across the Willamette over the St. John's Bridge. Only a few bridges were still operational these days. The rest were swallowed by floodwaters or collapsed under the weight of time and neglect. The city's bones were old, and they creaked loud enough for everyone to hear. As usual, most morgues could be found in basements, easier to keep things cool and keep other things from wandering off. But basements didn't mix well with rising tides. That left only a handful of dry, accessible facilities. We were headed to one of the few still above water. The sun made a rare appearance, slipping through the clouds in thin, apologetic streaks. A reminder it still existed, just not to expect much of it. Light cut through the grime and damp, catching in puddles that clung to the streets like old stains. The city looked like it had been crying for years and finally run out of tears. Once Callen and I hammered out our story, I even tried closing my eyes. Futile. Sleep wasn't on the menu. My brain refused to shut up, grinding through every detail, every possibility, every mistake. JR. While my body begged for rest, my stomach decided to start a protest of its own. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd eaten. Judging by the noise it made, neither could it. Callen glanced over, one brow raised. "When's the last time you ate, Fade? Or slept?" "Plenty of time for all that later," I muttered, despite what my gut says. Without another word, he popped open the glove box and pulled out a bag of peanuts. Cops and their snacks. It's a law of nature. He handed it over, and hunger overruled my pride. I tore the bag open and inhaled half before I could even thank him. They weren't fresh. Hell, probably had a badge of their own by now. But I didn't care. Salty, stale, and next to godliness. More fuel for the furnace. Anything to keep me going. "You're going to burn yourself out, you know that?" he said, watching me chew. "Well," I said through a mouthful of peanuts, "it's a race to see what kills me first. The death penalty, the syndicate, or myself." That got a chuckle out of him. More tension than humor, but I'd take it. I finished off the bag and crushed it into a ball. Didn't know what to do with it, so I waited till he wasn't looking and stuffed it into the cigarette tray in the door. Once I cleared the last of the peanuts from my mouth, I reached down, grabbed his half-empty cup of coffee, and washed them down. He didn't look over, but still shook his head. "So," Callen started, clearly uncomfortable, "I did a little digging into your case." That took me completely by surprise. "Oh?" He grimaced. Looking into another detective's case is more than just frowned upon. In Callen's case, it would have been more than just a slap on the wrist. He didn't just put his neck out for me. He damn near laid his head down in the guillotine. "Callen, you didn't have to do that," I said apologetically. "It's not like I went digging in evidence or poking around the crime scene," he said. "I didn't find out much more than you already know, but there was one detail that stuck out. No bullet was ever found." "No bullet?" "No bullet, no casing, not even an impact at the scene. Clear entry and exit bullet wounds on the body, however. And the gun was found at the scene." Callen nodded in agreement. "The body wasn't placed from somewhere else either. Doesn't make any sense." I racked my brain for any ideas on how to craft a gun that fired disappearing bullets, but came up blank. If there was a way to do it, it was beyond anything I could piece together. We were heading down northwest Westover Road when Callen eased off the gas as we passed Irving. St. Vincent Hospital loomed ahead of us. The building rose from the roadside like a fortress from another age. Brick and stone stacked so high they seemed to scrape the midday sky. Narrow windows lined each level in stern, orderly rows, watching over the valley with unblinking patience. On one end, an exposed skeleton of balconies and stair landings clung to the structure, as if grafted on later, each platform suspended above the steep hillside behind it. Perched against the mountain slope, it felt both isolated and indispensable. A place where lives were shaped, where secrets settled, where hope and something darker passed through the same doors. Even without knowing its purpose, you could feel it. This wasn't just a building. It was an institution, a monument, a keeper of old things, history heavy enough to press itself into the stone itself. Callen parked out front and reached in the glove box again, this time for his badge. I noticed his other gear tucked beside it, gun, flashlight, cuffs, left behind on purpose. Off duty, after all. No need for dramatics in a hospital. I shrugged out of my jacket and tossed it in the back seat, ran my fingers through my hair, combed my beard as best I could, and tried to brush the dry mud off my pants. The result wasn't impressive. I was aiming for presentable and landed at probably homeless. We climbed out of the car and up the steps to the front doors. Early afternoon meant plenty of people around, staff, patients, pedestrians. A few gave me double takes as we walked in. Can't blame them. The lobby was dim, lit by flickering wall sconces and a few overhead bulbs that buzzed like angry insects. The tile floor was cracked in places, patched with mismatched squares. A faint antiseptic smell hung in the air, barely masking the scent of mildew and old blood. The midday sun leaked in through the windows and blended with the spectral jade of the lights, giving the lobby a surreal haze. Nurses moved like ghosts, their shoes silent on the stone. Few patients sat slumped in chairs, eyes glazed, waiting for something. Maybe treatment, maybe time to pass. A rusted elevator stood at the far end of the hall, its doors slightly ajar. We headed straight for the front desk. Behind it sat a middle-aged nurse with a face that could curdle milk, the kind who didn't have time for nonsense. Her eyes locked on me first, suspicion oozing out of the gaze. I gave her my most polite smile. She did not return the favor. Figures. I could walk in wearing a halo and still get treated like a walking crime scene. "Good afternoon, miss," Callen said, switching to his official tone. "We're here to inspect a potential victim's body in the morgue." Her gaze flicked to him, then back to me, clearly not sold. "I see some identification, officer." "Dareth," he said, already handing over his badge. She inspected it carefully under the sterile, ethereal hospital light, the nickel catching a faint blue-green sheen. Callen took care of his badge the way some men cared for holy relics. Once satisfied, she looked up again, first at him, then at me. "Oh," Callen said, catching her expression. "This is Fidelius Corvin. He's a key witness. I need his confirmation on the ID." She didn't look convinced, but she handed the badge back anyways. Her fingers lingered on it a moment too long, like she was debating whether to call someone. Then she glanced at the clipboard, made a quick note, and finally spoke. "Down the hall to the left, second door on your right, then down the stairs." She hesitated, her lips tightening just a fraction. "The other one is down there too." Callen's jaw twitched, but he didn't bite. "Much obliged, ma'am," I said, aiming for charm. Callen shot me a sideways look. The nurse rolled her eyes. I was still smiling. "Thank you, miss. We'll be on our way," Callen added smoothly. He gave me a tap on the arm and nodded toward the hallway. We started walking. "Smooth, Fade. Maybe don't try that again until you've had a shower," he muttered. The corridor looked clean enough for inspection, but not the kind of clean that made you want to breathe too deep. The lights overhead flickered in slow pulses, casting long shadows that crawled along the walls. Somewhere deeper in the building, a machine beeped steadily, marking time and heartbeats. I shrugged. I guess I need to work on my people skills. The morgue hit us like falling through ice, cold enough to bite bone. I shivered, mostly from the temperature, not unease, or so I told myself. Goosebumps crawled across my skin. I longed for my coat. The air was sharp, metallic. There were no windows down here, the only light coming from the vertical glass-lit spines set in the walls every few feet. Each tube carried a line of subtle rune etching down its center, delicate work done by precise hands. Glass rune techs were the surgeons of our line of work. Working with material that fragile was masterwork. I had tried it once in my apprentice days, when I was still working out my niche. More often than not, I ended up shattering the glass in my offhand. I gave it up pretty quickly after I hit my wound quota. I stopped and raised a hand to the lights, running my thumb along the sigils. As it passed each rune, a cold bite kissed my skin. Interesting. The word echoed down the empty hallway. Callen noticed I wasn't following and stopped to look back. What is it? The rune work on these lights, I said, pointing. The circuit's actually breathing out cold air. Pretty neat trick to keep this place cool enough to store bodies. He snorted. You Runetechs think of everything. Not me, I said. I couldn't pull off something like that. Tile covered everything but the ceiling. Easier to hose down that way. Floor drains every few feet, a few missing tiles, catching puddles I hoped were mostly water. As we walked the hall, we passed several preparation rooms, each with a metal table at its center and smaller ones ringed around it, covered in tools that gleamed like old teeth. What made them unsettling wasn't the presence of death, but the absence of anyone living. We found the medical examiner in the second-to-last room. She looked carved from the tide itself. Full-blooded deepborn, no question. Skin with that faint gray-green hue like mist over seawater. Faint gill traces ghosting her jawline, half hidden behind black hair that shimmered blue under the morgue's ether lamps. She was mid-autopsy, scalpel tracing a long, practiced line from shoulder to sternum. The movement was effortless, like a ship cutting through still water. She didn't even notice us until Callen coughed. Excuse me, he said. Sorry to interrupt. Her blade paused. Eyes lifted, murky jade, calm, unreadable, with that slick oil-on-water sheen only Deepborn had. I don't believe you should be down here, she said evenly. I'm sure that's usually the case, Callen replied, putting a hand to his chest. Officer Dureth, this is Fidelius Corvin. We're here to see a body. Well, you've certainly come to the right place. Couldn't tell if it was a joke. But, she continued, I'll need more than that to pull the right one. That's the tricky part, Miss... Dr. Voss. Dr. Voss, Callen corrected smoothly. We're not entirely sure which body. She arched an eyebrow. This really isn't the place for window shopping. We laughed. She didn't. Right, Callen said, clearing his throat. We're looking into a recent case, possibly within the last few days. That narrows it down, she said flatly. I stepped in. Something with strange markings or unusual burns, anything that looked ritualistic. That caught our attention. One does come to mind, she said, though the cause of death was straightforward. Shot to the head, point blank. I was about to chalk it up to another dead end when she added, What was odd, though, were the ether burns. Full body, head to toe. Callen and I exchanged a look, the raised eyebrow kind that didn't need words. That definitely counts as unusual, I said. May we see it? Callen asked. Of course, Officer Dureth. Her tone softened after giving Callen another glance. And please, call me Lyra. She crossed at a wall of storage drawers, scanning the tags. She found one midway down, 3 from the left, and slid it out with a metallic sigh. One glance at the toe tag, then a nod. This is it, gentlemen. She pulled back the sheet. The smell hit first. Not decay, but ozone. Every inch was covered in ether burns. Where fire blackens, ether bleaches. Here it left the skin pale, semi-translucent, veins like dark rivers running under frost. No char, no smoke, just the sharp sting of static in the air. The body was pure-blooded nospheric, lean muscle packed tight against the bone, elongated canines just visible even with the jaw slack. The few patches of skin that weren't burned had that faint, unhealthy pallor nospherics never quite shook, no matter how well they fed. I noticed copper dust ground into the creases beneath his fingernails. A subtle thing, easy to miss if you didn't know what to look for. Runetech. And the wound, exit wound, dead center between the eyes, a small, perfect void. By the deep, Callen whispered. I agreed. It gets stranger, said Lyra, unfazed. Officer Dureth, would you help me turn him over? Callen hesitated, then complied. The body was dense, a slab of muscle and memory. As they rolled it, something hummed through the air, faint, electric. Then I saw it. No, felt it. From the base of the spine to the skull, a trail of runes etched so faintly they shimmered only when caught in the corner of vision. "Ah, so you see it," Lyra murmured. Her tone had shifted, not surprise, but fascination. "You're a resonant, then?" I nodded. She smiled faintly, kind scholars wear when something they've only read about walks into the room. "It's remarkable, isn't it? The etheric gene, a sleeping strand buried in our DNA since before recorded time. Most said it was junk code, dead weight from wherever we crawled up from." Her smile thinned. "Then Narketh stirred, and the world remembered what it was." Callen and I winced at hearing the name spoken out loud. It was the unwritten rule to keep it unspoken. You never knew if saying it might draw his attention. "Now where were we?" she continued. "Races once told in ancient lore or campfire tales, now walking, breathing fact." Her gaze drifted toward the tube light hanging from the ceiling, faintly pulsing with ethereal life. "Now when the old deep stirred, it shook something loose in our blood. The nospheric hungered, the feral burned, the fae remembered what glamour meant, the deep-born, well," her eyes flicked back to me, "and a few heard the hum instead of the voice, the resonance." I couldn't tell if she was fascinated with history or about to dissect me. I cleared my throat and gestured back to the body. "The tattoos," I said, forcing the topic back on track. "He's covered in runic tattoos." Callen frowned. "What tattoos? I don't see anything." "They're there," I said, pointing. "Up the spine, all the way to the skull." "I don't see them fade," he repeated. Lyra nodded, her focus narrowing on the body again. "You're seeing what's gone. Not ink, but its echo. Mr. Corvin is—" "Just fade," I cut in. "Mr. Corvin," she repeated, "is correct in essence. Those runes you see were not tattooed. They were painted. Blood-etched, to use a tune more fitting to current times." The term landed like a blade tip. She must have read the confusion and dread on our faces. "It's not common knowledge, and to be clear, not confirmed. Just myth, mostly." She crossed her arms, eyes unfocused as though reciting a ghost story. "In the old myths, long before the awakening, there were tales of rituals sealed in blood, the practitioner's own essence used to forge the link. Sometimes it was painted, other times carved into the skin. They call it blood magic, sacrifice, life binding. The words changed. The principle did not." Callen grunted. "Can't imagine any of those ended well." Lyra gave the faintest smile. "Few things worth power do." She motioned for him to turn the body back over. Her tone never wavered, even as she continued. "When one's blood becomes the binding medium, the body itself remembers the spell, even after death." The sheet whispered back into place. "I can't say for certain, but it's the only hypothesis that fits. And you, Mr. Corvin, being a resonant, your sensitivity likely allowed you to perceive the residual signature." The phrase crawled under my skin. It sounded wrong, like something whispered through a locked door. A thought forced its way to the front of my mind. "What about actual tattoos?" The question left my mouth before my brain had a chance to catch up. As in, if someone tried to tattoo a rune circuit on their own body, or someone else's. That seemed to pique her interest. "Why, yes, that would very much fall in line with the theory." I absent-mindedly rubbed the spot behind my right ear, just inside my hairline. A few years back, I had the brilliant idea to attempt a rune line there, something to quiet the constant thrumming I hear from anything running on ether or runes, which, these days, was everything. It was sound in theory. In practice, I went completely deaf in that ear for a week. Luckily, JR helped me figure out how to cancel the circuit. That help was immediately followed by a stern berating. Lyra eyed me suspiciously. "Why do you ask?" No reason," I said nervously. Callen pointed at the body and frowned. "But Dr. Voss, why can you also see it, and I can't?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. She crossed to the filing cabinet, thumbed through her drawer, and returned with a folder. She laid it open on the body. Photographs, black and white, clear as daylight. Runes painted all along the spine. The runes were painted, Lyra said. If my hypothesis is correct, using ether-infused pigment mixed with the blood of the Runetech conducting the ritual. My eyebrows knit as I rubbed my chin. That was a new one for me. Its procedure, she went on. All unidentified bodies are photographed upon arrival. If no claim or investigation comes within 24 hours, we prepare them for storage, which includes washing. Callen sighed, somewhere between apology and frustration. Right. Of course. Hey, Doc. I cut in, sparing him any further humiliation. You wouldn't happen to know where the body was found. Lyra flipped through the file. Warehouse, Southwest District. Here. She handed me the report. Address is listed. I scanned it, committing it to memory. Appreciate the help, I said, handing it back. Of course, gentlemen. Anything else? No, Dr. Voss. You've been more than helpful, Callen said, offering a hand. Lyra, she corrected again, shaking his. Lyra, he echoed. I clapped on his shoulder. We'll get out of your hair then. Cases to solve and all that. Especially mine. Her brown furrowed. Excuse me? Never mind, I said quickly. Thanks again. We turned to leave, Lyra still watching, still curious. Behind us, the morgue resonated softly, like a breath drawn in, waiting to exhale. The ether lights trembled against the walls, their green sheen bleeding along the tiles like veins under skin. The air carried that faint metallic tang of ionized air, as if something was walking just beneath the floor, remembering the sound of its own name. Thanks for listening to the Runetech Archives. Bronze and Blood, the first book in the series, is available now. This podcast offers a narrated preview of the first half of the story. You can find Bronze and Blood as an ebook on Amazon and Kobo, and in paperback on Amazon as well. If you'd like updates on the series, visit the website to sign up for news, or follow along on social media. Links to everything are in the episode description below. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in Fade's next adventure.